Welcome everybody, Wolfpack Chat. It's Miracle Monday. We're going to be talking about heat acclimation. It's getting warm. A little bit of background on heat acclimation. So it takes 2 to 3 weeks for the process for you to become more acclimated. So, if you're going to have a hot race, you need to start ahead of time. Part of that is getting a suntan, if you tan. Let's see. You want to run when you're going to race, what time you're going to run. So if you're doing we're getting ready to go to Chattanooga to do a relay, and there's team members that are doing the whole race. So I specifically waited until noon, 1 o'clock to run, because that's what time I'm going to be running when I race here in a couple of weeks. So I'm a little bit behind as far as getting outside and on the pavement because I've been nursing a foot injury. I should have been outside running as it's gotten a little bit warmer sooner, but the pavement just isn't a good thing for the foot. So I was scheduled for, 2.5 hour run. And part of heat acclimation is that you should take it in chunks in the beginning. So I had a 2.5 hour run. I got too hot at the end of an hour. So I decided to finish my run inside in the shop out of the sun. Wasn't that much cooler. It did have a breeze, but I didn't use a fan, but it was out of the sun. So when you're heat acclimating, doing your shorter runs in the beginning in the heat, hopefully the time you're going to race, is smarter. Doing too much in the heat at one time, and this goes for the bike too, leads you into heat sickness, maybe heat exhaustion, and that's really not a good place to be. It's a little bit of kind of brain damage, kind of like concussion, and especially if you're not doing your hydration and your sodium right. So getting the sodium wrong, and when you have puffy fingers and a sloshy belly, you're getting your sodium wrong, and cognition kind of goes down a little bit, and that's a little bit of swelling in the brain. What happens is when you get too hot and you're sweating a lot, but you don't have enough sodium on board, and then you drink just straight water, the body's not actually putting that water into the bloodstream, it's putting it into interstitial space. So the puffy fingers, puffy belly, sloshy belly, and it also puts it in the head. So that's the problem with getting your sodium wrong, the hyponatremia, stuff like that. It's a real deal. It's a little bit of brain damage because you're squeezing the noggin, squeezing the brain in there. So you need to be graceful when heat acclimating, especially if you live in a climate like in the Midwest in Kansas. It's cool, warmish for a second, but then it just gets hot and poof, there you are. And if you're doing an early race, sometimes it sneaks up on you. So just be graceful about it. You don't need to do 2 hours first. That's not that beneficial. Maybe an hour is beneficial. Don't add too much stress to yourself. So it takes 2 to 3 weeks to get heat acclimated. Getting a suntan is helpful if you suntan. Getting your hydration correct, your electrolytes. So think about for every bike bottle of water that you drink, you need to be putting in relatively close to 700, 800 milligrams of sodium. So that's kind of like a teaspoon. A teaspoon of salt per bike bottle of water. Close, it's a little off, but you get the idea. Do your heat acclimation in chunks. Run when you're going to run during your race. The other thing is getting sunburn at a race is a bad deal. It's super duper stressful for the body. So if you can afford one of those sun shirts, DeSoto has a really nice one. It's dropping off $100. However, totally worth it. what's happening when you are sweating and you're hot is that blood gets shunted to your skin, to the capillaries in your skin, and what's happening is it's getting more blood volume running through your skin. You've got a lot of skin area, so blood goes more towards your skin and running the blood through that. And so it's kind of like the opposite of an air conditioner, and how that works. So the blood's running through close to your skin, you're sweating, and so your skin is water. It says you're sweating, it's wet, and then it evaporates, and it pulls off the heat out of the blood vessels that are close to the skin, so that's why you sweat. And then people that have the salt on the skin, it's just because you are not ingesting enough sodium, it's coming out, you're not replacing it. You want to get to the point where you don't have salt all over you. That's one of the indicators that you're getting it way wrong. And like I did, I think I ran a total of 2.5, almost 3 hours today. And I didn't have the salt on my face. I was doing my salt correctly. I didn't have the salt sweat, kind of lines on the dark shorts. That is an indication that you're not getting it right. And it's this heat transfer on your skin that's cooling you off. It's pulling heat out of the bloodstream that's really close to your skin, and it's evaporating off the skin. So the idea with the sun shirts, because it's a little bit counterintuitive, however, for one, it keeps you from getting sunburnt, and the second one is that the sun shirts will stay wet. And so you are replacing part of the mechanism of your body sweating to keep your skin wet, so it will pull off heat. Okay? So if that sun shirt is on and then you get it wet and it stays wet because it's more of a fabric, and so it'll stay wet longer, it helps conduct that heat off your skin out into the environment. And so that's kind of the beauty of the sun shirts, is that they help you pull heat off the skin by getting them wet in your run stations. They stay wet longer than your skin does. That's the beautiful nature of them. And there is no lie. They aren't exaggerating when they say the sun shirts will keep you 10 degrees cooler. It is true. I wear them all the time. I've done some of the hottest runs around, like Boulder. Boulder's a pretty hot run, and saved my bacon. Didn't get sunburnt, kept me cool, kept the heart rate down, because if you're staying cooler, the heart rate doesn't have to work as hard to keep you cool. Because ultimately, when you're heat training, when you're running in the heat, the body's priority, its number one priority, is to make sure that your brain doesn't get too hot. So that feeling of, sorry about the train, so that feeling of the pulsing here, and just the whole face and the top of the head being way too hot and prickly, that's a sign that you need to slow down. You need to get your head wet. And if it doesn't stop, you need to get out of the sun for a second, maybe walk for a second to get the heart rate down. If things are pulsing here, that's a little bit on the too hot side, the two heart rates going too much, trying to get you too cool. So just kind of be mindful of that as you're acclimating to the heat. If you have some of that stuff going on, you just need to stop and walk. Okay, let the heart rate come back down, get your head wet. What I do is I always race with a cap on. I like to keep my face kind of shaded. I'm trying to find one of those caps that have that material that's white that stays wet and it goes over here on your neck. But if you need to get your hair wet, take your hat off, get your hair wet. The caps are really nice because running through the aid stations, you can put ice up here and then put your hat back on. That's a nice way to stay cool. So the sun shirts, they work good. They are worth the $100. The skin's fairly delicate, so on hot races, I've been known to run with a Camelback because I can't get dehydrated with the heart stuff that I have, and nobody should really be getting that dehydrated. So running with a Camelback in a really hot race is okay. The other thing that I do with running and managing heat, aid station to aid station, you're doing a lot when you're going through those aid stations. You might be managing your base salts, you might be, I don't know, managing your whatever, getting an orange or something. In order to not get behind with water, you need 4 Dixie cups of water filled to how much they can only just give you maybe half of a Dixie cup. So roughly the math is that you need 4 of them. Well, there's no way that you're going to manage 4 Dixie cups in a hot race when you're putting ice down your shirt and stuff like that. So one of the things that I do on hot races, if I know I'm going to be in the back of the pack and I don't care, I'm going to do a lot of walking, I'll just wear my Camelback. But if I am trying to run through the heat, I will wear one of those small handhelds, and then I will manage my base salts when I'm running. I will manage my infinite that's in my fuel belt when I'm running, and then when I'm walking through the aid stations, I will undo the top of that handheld and I will ask them to fill it up. Put that back on, get an orange or get some soda, and then I can sip on that handheld through that next mile. And that's kind of how I don't get behind on water. So you might give that a try. It's a little bit of a high maintenance thing, and sometimes just honestly going through some of these aid run stations, it's a little bit of a slow process because they're really not ready for you to hand them that. They might have to go find the gallon jug to fill it up, or they might take a while to get enough Dixie cups to fill it up. But if drinking enough water is an issue that you know you need to make sure that you get more water, or you're one of those people that goes to the run stations and you drink, you're trying to manage the 2 Dixie cups and you start coughing it up because you get it wrong, that's another good reason to take one of those handhelds. You don't have to do it while you're running through or getting through the run station, and you can kind of just sip it at will on the rest of the way. So that's another way to manage kind of some of these heat related things. If you have any questions, put a question in a comment. I think that I have covered a lot of the stuff. Give yourself grace for right now. It takes a while to get a little bit more heat acclimated. If it's humid, you're not gonna, the sweat that you're sweating isn't gonna evaporate off the skin that much. Or if you're wearing one of those sun shirts that's wet, if it's humid, there's nowhere for the water to go necessarily. This evaporation works better when the air is dry, obviously. So you're kind of screwed when it's hot and humid a little bit. So, you know, not getting sunburnt, drinking enough water, drinking enough sodium, eating enough sodium, and whatnot. Okay, last thing I think that I'm going to say, do not take ibuprofen. You should never be doing ibuprofen when you're racing and training anyway, but especially not when you are in the heat. So when you process ibuprofen, your body makes prostaglandins. Prostaglandins are molecules that are big. So what happens is when you get a little bit dehydrated, the capillaries in the kidneys, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, so the little capillaries in your kidneys get a little stressed. And then when these big, you know, things are kind of clamping down a little bit, but blood pressure and volume, it's a little stressful. And so when these prostaglandins, these big molecules run through the kidneys and you're processing this stuff, damage the capillaries of your kidneys. And it's a really nice way to give yourself acute renal failure and peeing of the blood and whatnot. And then you end up going to the doctor and he's like, yeah, don't do ibuprofen when you're running, and especially when it's hot. It's a big no-no. So if you feel like you need to take pain medication, aspirin or Tylenol. Aspirin's probably better. Hopefully you can just sort of suck it up. Because, I don't know, in my experience, if you're hurting, a little bit of ibuprofen or a little bit of Tylenol really is not going to help anyway. So anyway, that's kind of my take. But if you need to do that, make sure it's not ibuprofen. It's just incredibly hard on the kidneys when you get slightly dehydrated and when it gets hot. So I think that's all I want to say about heat acclimation and training. Be graceful with yourself. 2 or 3 weeks. Give yourself time. Try to get a suntan. Use a sun shirt if you need to. The less stress on the body, the better. Run when your race, when you're, noon, 1 o'clock. And try not to get the water and the sodium wrong. Okay. Let me know if you guys have any questions. If you have any questions, I'll address in a second video. Hope you're having a great day.